"Stop spending our money!" my son-in-law screamed at me over dinner, as if I were a beggar in his house. I just smiled and said, "All right." The next morning I drained his entire retirement fund, $400,000, and flew to Florida. When he opened his banking app and saw zero, his scream probably echoed across state lines. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Howard Bennett. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived in Littleton, Colorado, for the past 32 years. Spent 4 decades as a certified public accountant at one of Denver's largest auditing firms. Numbers have always made sense to me. People, not so much. I learned that lesson the hard way. Let me tell you about my daughter Vanessa and her husband Trenton. 8 years ago, they showed up at my doorstep with 2 suitcases and a story about temporary difficulties. Trenton had lost his job. Vanessa was pregnant. They needed just a few months to get back on their feet. I said yes because that's what fathers do. I said yes because I remembered Vanessa as a little girl, running to greet me after work, wrapping her arms around my legs. That little girl is gone now. The few months stretched into years. They never left. Instead, they spread through my house like ivy consuming a wall. First, they took the master bedroom because the baby needs space. Then, Trenton claimed my study for his home office, which he mostly uses for watching football. Last year, Vanessa suggested I move to the small room on the first floor, the one without proper heating, because the stairs are dangerous at your age. Dangerous. I climb those stairs every day. I'm 68, not 90. Trenton works as a mid-level manager at some logistics company, makes about $78,000 a year. You wouldn't know it from looking at him. The man wears a Rolex he bought on credit, drives a BMW he leases, and talks about money like he invented the concept. He's been about to get promoted for 3 years now. Vanessa works part-time at a dental clinic. She used to call me every day when she lived across town. Now we live under the same roof, and I can go a week without hearing her voice. But here's what Trenton doesn't know. Here's what nobody knows. 12 years ago, when Trenton and Vanessa got engaged, I wanted to give them a real gift. Something that would matter. I opened a retirement account for Trenton, a 401k rollover IRA, at a major brokerage firm, and because I've been a CPA for 4 decades, because I've seen what happens when families don't plan properly, I set it up as a joint tenancy with right of survivorship account. Both our names, equal access. I deposited $380,000 of my own savings as seed money. The deal was simple. The money stays untouched until Trenton retires, and I keep access, just in case. Just in case. Trenton has added about $47,000 to that account over the years. The balance now sits at $412,847.63. He checks it every month. I know because he loves to mention it at dinner. "Our retirement fund is doing great," he'll say, puffing his chest. Our. As if he built it himself. The dinner that changed everything happened on a Saturday. Trenton had received some minor promotion, a new title with no salary increase, and insisted we celebrate at the Capitol Grill downtown. Vanessa agreed. I was told to come, not asked. The restaurant was crowded. Dark wood, white tablecloths, the clink of expensive glasses. Trenton ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than my grocery bill for a week. He raised his glass. "To success," he said, looking at me as if I should be grateful to witness his glory. I ordered a ribeye steak. $54 on the menu. Trenton's face changed the moment the waiter walked away. His smile dropped like a mask falling off. He leaned across the table, and his voice came out in a hiss that the neighboring tables could probably hear. "Stop spending our money," he said. "You think you can live off us forever? Do you have any idea what that steak costs?" Vanessa stared at her napkin. She didn't look up. She didn't say a word. The waiter returned with bread. Nobody touched it. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Trenton wasn't finished. Every month I look at our expenses and there you are. Your medications, your food, your jazz records. Yes, I've seen the credit card statements. When was the last time you contributed anything to this household? My house. He was sitting in my house, eating dinner I would pay for, asking what I contribute. I could have reminded him. I could have told him about the $380,000 gathering interest in his precious retirement account. I could have mentioned that the roof over his head, the walls around him, the very chair holding his self-important backside, all of it belongs to me. But I didn't. I took a slow sip of water. I set the glass down carefully. I looked at Trenton, at his expensive watch, at his smug face, at the man who had somehow convinced my daughter that I was the burden. "All right," I said. That was it. One word. Vanessa finally looked up, confused. Trenton blinked, clearly expecting a fight that never came. "All right," he repeated. "You want to talk about whose money is whose?" I smiled. "All right, if we can do that." The steak arrived. I ate every bite, slowly, savoring it. Trenton watched me with a mixture of confusion and irritation. He didn't understand. He wouldn't understand until it was too late. That night back home, I waited until the house went quiet. Until Trenton and Vanessa disappeared into my old bedroom. Until the lights went off, and the only sound was the furnace humming. Then I went to my room, closed the door, opened the old safe in the back of my closet. The one nobody knows about, because nobody bothers to learn anything about me anymore. Inside, a folder, manila envelope, slightly yellowed at the edges. Documents from 2013. The account agreement. The JTWROS designation, clear as day. Bank statements showing exactly where that $380,000 came from. My money, my account, my right. I sat on the edge of my bed, folder in my lap, and let out a breath I'd been holding for years. "So, Trenton, you want to talk about whose money is whose? Let's talk." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my cramped room, surrounded by boxes of vinyl records I'd collected over 50 years, and I remembered. I remembered the summer Vanessa turned 7. We drove to Estes Park, just the two of us, because her mother was working, and Vanessa had begged to see the mountains. We stopped at a diner on the way, and she ordered pancakes, shaped like Mickey Mouse. She couldn't finish them. Too much food for a little girl, but she insisted on taking the leftovers for the squirrels. We never found any squirrels, but we found a stream where she splashed for hours while I sat on a rock and watched her laugh. That girl called me Daddy until she was 22 years old. Somewhere along the way, Daddy became Dad, then Dad became Father. Now it's just him or your grandfather when she talks to her son James about me. I hear it through the walls. "Go see if he needs anything." As if I'm a patient in a nursing home, not her father in his own house. I remembered the day Trenton proposed. I was suspicious from the start. Not because of anything specific, just a feeling in my gut. The kind you develop after 40 years of auditing companies and catching discrepancies. Something about the way he looked at our house. Not at Vanessa. At the house. But Vanessa was happy. Genuinely happy. And what kind of father denies his daughter that? So I smiled. I shook Trenton's hand. And a month later, I sat down with him and explained my gift. "This is for your future," I told him, sliding the paperwork across the table. "Both your futures, but I'm setting it up as a joint account. You understand what that means?" He nodded. He didn't understand. He signed where I pointed and never read the fine print. I watched him do it. I watched him look at the balance. $380,000. And I saw the greed flash across his face, quick as lightning, there and gone. I should have said something then. I didn't. The next morning I woke up before dawn. The house was silent. I made coffee, black, and spread the documents across the kitchen table. The joint tenancy agreement. Crystal clear. Both names. Equal rights. Either party can withdraw funds without the other's consent. The bank statements from 2013. Wire transfer, $380,000 from Howard Bennett's personal savings account to the newly opened IRA. The contribution history. Trenton's deposits. Irregular, totaling $47,128 over 12 years. Mine, $380,000. Plus, 12 years of compound growth. I called the brokerage firm when they opened. Confirmed what I already knew. Yes, Mr. Bennett, as a joint owner, you have full authority to transfer or withdraw any amount at any time. No, sir, you don't need the other account holder's permission. That's the nature of JTWROS. I thanked the representative and hung up. That afternoon, I visited Rachel Cortez, an attorney on 17th Street downtown. 45 years old, sharp eyes, specializing in real estate and family law. I showed her everything. Let me be clear, she said, reviewing the documents. This account was structured as joint tenancy from inception. You contributed the initial funds, substantially documented. Under Colorado law, either owner can withdraw the entirety of joint account assets. It's not theft, it's not fraud, it's exercising your legal rights as co-owner. And the house, the deed is in your name alone, has been for 32 years. Your daughter and son-in-law are guests. Guests you can ask to leave. I nodded slowly. Thank you, Ms. Cortez. I'll be in touch. Back home, the atmosphere had shifted. Trenton strutted around like a general after a victory. He spoke to Vanessa in the kitchen, his voice carrying through the thin walls. Did you see him at dinner? Didn't say a word after I put him in his place. The old man finally understands how things work around here. Vanessa murmured something I couldn't catch. Trust me, Trenton continued. He'll behave now. Probably scared we'll put him in a home. Which honestly might not be the worst idea if he keeps. I stepped away from the door. I'd heard enough. The next day I found Trenton in the living room, my living room, with my furniture, watching my television. Howard, he said without looking up, we're having guests this weekend. Try to stay in your room when they arrive. You know how you get confused sometimes. Confused. I have a sharper mind than he'll ever possess. But I didn't argue. I simply nodded and walked away. That afternoon I went to the bank and opened a new personal account. Then I bought a one-way ticket to Naples, Florida. Thursday departure. Why Florida? No state income tax. Warm weather. And far enough from Denver that unexpected visitors would require real effort. That evening I sat in my room and played a Miles Davis record. Kinda Blue. I let the trumpet wash over me while I finalized my plan. $380,000 I gave them. Plus the roof over their heads. Plus 8 years of watching my home become their home, while I shrank into corners and closets, and the smallest room in a house I've owned for 3 decades. And what did I get? A son-in-law who tells me to hide when company comes. A daughter who can't meet my eyes. A dinner where I'm scolded for ordering a steak. Well, message received. Later that night I heard them through the wall again, Trenton's voice smug and satisfied. The old man finally knows his place. I stood in the darkness of my room, and for the first time in years, I smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from knowing something no one else knows. You think you've won, Trenton. You think I've surrendered. You have no idea what's coming. Thursday morning. I woke at 6:47 before the sun had fully risen over the mountains. The house was silent. Trenton and Vanessa wouldn't be up for hours. They never rose before 9 on weekdays, another luxury afforded by living rent-free in someone else's home. I showered, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt, and made myself a cup of coffee, strong, black, the last cup I would drink in this kitchen. My suitcase was already packed, hidden in the back of my closet. 2 changes of clothes, my laptop, a folder of essential documents, and 3 of my favorite vinyl records. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and Thelonious Monk. Everything else could be shipped later or replaced. At exactly 8 o'clock, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into the brokerage account. The balance glowed on the screen. $412,847.63. I initiated an electronic transfer. Full amount. Destination: my new personal account at a different bank. The one Trenton didn't know existed. The one I had opened specifically for this purpose. The system asked for confirmation. I clicked yes. Transfer initiated. Processing time: immediate for electronic funds. I closed the laptop, finished my coffee, washed the cup, and placed it in the drying rack. Then I picked up a pen and a single sheet of paper. "Thank you for dinner," I wrote. "Now we're even." I left the note on my desk, where Trenton would find it when he eventually came looking. Then I called a taxi, carried my suitcase out the front door, and left the house on Aspen Ridge Drive for the last time. The taxi driver was a chatty fellow named Marco. He asked where I was headed. I told him the airport. He asked if I was going somewhere warm. I said Florida. He said that sounded nice, that his grandmother lived in Tampa, that he wished he could visit more often. I let him talk. I watched Littleton disappear through the rear window, the house where I raised my daughter, the neighborhood where I'd lived for 32 years, the life I was leaving behind. Strange how little I felt. I expected sadness. Instead, there was only a peculiar calm, the kind that comes when you finally stop waiting for things to change and decide to change them yourself. My flight departed at 11:15. I had a window seat. As the plane lifted off, I watched Colorado shrink beneath the clouds, the Rocky Mountains becoming nothing more than wrinkles in a vast brown carpet. Somewhere down there, Trenton was waking up. Probably reaching for his phone, the way he always did. Probably checking his retirement account, the way he did every few days, admiring the balance like a dragon admiring its hoard. I wondered what his face would look like when he saw the number. The flight attendant offered drinks. I ordered a ginger ale and smiled at her. She smiled back, a genuine smile, not the practiced customer service kind. I must have looked different somehow. Lighter. 3 hours and 20 minutes later, the plane touched down in Southwest Florida International Airport. I collected my bag, walked outside, and felt the humid air hit me like a warm blanket. Naples. Palm trees. Sunshine. A new beginning at 68 years old. I took a taxi to a hotel I had booked the week before. A modest place near the beach, nothing fancy. I unpacked my few belongings, set up my laptop, and ordered room service for lunch. Then, I sat on the balcony and watched the ocean. Seagulls circled overhead. The waves rolled in, steady and predictable, following rules older than humanity. I thought about Trenton, about Vanessa, about all the years I had spent shrinking myself to fit their expectations. My phone buzzed around 2:30 in the afternoon. A notification from the brokerage firm. Transfer complete. Funds successfully deposited. I smiled and deleted the notification. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. Trenton's number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again. And again. 12 missed calls in 20 minutes. Then the voicemails started. I didn't listen to them. I could imagine the content well enough. Confusion, then anger, then panic. A text message appeared. "Call me back right now." Then another. "What did you do?" Then, "This is theft. I'm calling the police." I typed a response, considered it, and then deleted everything but 3 words. "Read the paperwork." Then I blocked his number. The phone rang once more. Vanessa this time. I watched her name flash on the screen. My daughter, the little girl who used to run to greet me. I let it ring. Then I blocked that number too. The sun was setting over the Gulf of Mexico, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I stood on my hotel balcony with a glass of lemonade and watched the colors change. Somewhere in Colorado, Trenton was discovering that his retirement fund had vanished. Somewhere, he was screaming at customer service representatives who would calmly explain that the transfer was authorized by a joint account holder. Somewhere, he was realizing that the old man he had dismissed and belittled had just outmaneuvered him completely. And somewhere, my daughter was learning a lesson I should have taught her years ago. Kindness is not weakness, and patience is not surrender. I raised my glass to the sunset. To new beginnings, I said to no one. The ocean answered with the eternal rhythm of the waves. The next morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. "Mr. Bennett, this is Detective Morrison from the Littleton Police Department. We received a complaint from a Mr. Trenton Bennett alleging theft of approximately $400,000 from a retirement account." I sat up straighter in my hotel chair. "I see. And what would you like from me, Detective?" "We're conducting a preliminary investigation. Can you tell me your side of the story?" I explained everything calmly. The joint account structure, the JTWROS designation from the original paperwork, my documented contribution of $380,000 as the initial deposit over 12 years ago. "Do you have documentation to support this?" "I have the original account agreement, bank records from when the account was opened, and a legal opinion from my attorney confirming my rights as co-owner. I can provide all of it." Papers shuffled on his end. A long pause followed. "Mr. Bennett, based on what you're describing, this appears to be a civil matter rather than a criminal one. Joint account holders do have withdrawal rights. But Mr. Trenton Bennett also mentioned something about you being mentally incapacitated." I almost laughed out loud. "Detective, I'm a retired CPA. I obtained a medical evaluation last week, specifically anticipating this accusation, confirming I'm in full possession of my mental faculties. I can provide that documentation as well." "I understand, sir. We'll review everything you send. In the meantime, I'd suggest consulting with your attorney." I called Rachel Cortez immediately after hanging up. "Howard," she answered, "I've already sent the police all relevant documentation. The account agreement, your contribution records, everything. This investigation goes nowhere. And if Trenton pursues civil action, he can try. But even if he argues some portion was his contribution, he's looking at maybe $47,000 over 12 years. You could counterclaim for 8 years of rent-free housing in the Denver metro area, which would easily exceed that. Any competent attorney would tell him to walk away." The call from Trenton came that evening from an unblocked number. He must have borrowed someone's phone. "You think you're clever, don't you?" His voice shook with pure rage. "You think you can just steal from me and walk away?" "Steal?" I kept my tone pleasant. "Trenton, I withdrew funds from an account I co-own. An account I funded with my own money. Every dollar documented. That was my retirement, mine. Actually, it was my $380,000 plus 12 years of compound growth. Your contributions totaled less than 12% of the balance. Would you like me to send you a detailed spreadsheet?" Silence. Heavy breathing. I could picture his face turning red, the vein in his forehead pulsing the way it always did when things didn't go his way. "I'm going to destroy you," he finally snarled. "We'll file for guardianship. You'll spend the rest of your life in a facility while I control every penny." "Interesting strategy. Did you mention this plan to your attorney?" More silence. "Because filing for guardianship requires evidence of incapacity. I have a recent medical evaluation stating otherwise. I have 40 years of professional credentials, and I have documented evidence of how you've treated me for 8 years." "What evidence?" "The time you suggested I move to the smallest room in my own house. The dinner where you screamed at me for ordering a steak. The conversation I overheard about putting me in a nursing home. Should I continue?" His breathing turned ragged. The mighty Trenton Bennett, finally confronted with consequences he couldn't talk his way out of. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Nothing. I've already taken what's mine, but since you asked, here's what happens next. I'm putting the house on Aspen Ridge Drive up for sale. You can't, I can. The deed is in my name alone, always has been. You and Vanessa have 30 days after closing to vacate. Start looking for apartments. Vanessa will never forgive you. That's her choice. But Trenton, I don't think Vanessa ever forgave herself for becoming you. I hung up before he could respond. 3 days later, a for sale sign appeared on the lawn. Asking price, $620,000. I saw photos of my house online, my furniture, my life of 32 years, offered to strangers. Vanessa called that evening from a number I hadn't yet blocked. Dad. Her voice was small, broken. Please, you can't do this to us. This is our home. It was my home, Vanessa. You were guests. I'm sorry about the dinner. I'm sorry about what Trenton said. But selling the house? Taking the retirement money? This is too far. The retirement money was my money. Every document proves it. But where will we go? I don't know. Where would I have gone if you put me in a nursing home like Trenton suggested? Long silence. Then, barely a whisper. You heard that? I heard everything, Vanessa. Every dismissive comment, every plan about my future without including me. Every time you called me him instead of Dad when talking to James. She was crying now. I could hear it in her uneven breathing. I made mistakes, she whispered. But you're my father. And you're my daughter. Which is why I'm giving you something Trenton doesn't deserve. I paused. When the house sells, I'll write you a check for $50,000. Use it as a down payment on your own place. A place that belongs to you, not to me, and not to your husband. $50,000? More than fair. More than I received from either of you in 8 years under the same roof. The line went quiet. I don't know what to say, Dad. You don't have to say anything. Just think about how you want your next chapter to look. And decide if Trenton is the person you want to write it with. I ended the call and stepped onto my hotel balcony. The Florida sun was setting over the Gulf, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow I would start looking at condos. Something small, near the water. A place of my own, where no one could tell me which room to sleep in, or when to hide from guests. For the first time in years, the future felt like something to look forward to, rather than something to endure. And somewhere in Colorado, Trenton Bennett was learning a lesson that would follow him forever. Never underestimate a quiet man with good paperwork. 3 weeks passed. The house on Aspen Ridge Drive attracted plenty of interest. 4-bedroom homes in Littleton don't sit on the market long. My realtor, a sharp woman named Patricia, called me every few days with updates. We have serious buyers, she told me one afternoon. A couple from Houston, the Garcias. They're relocating for work, looking for something move-in ready. They want to see the property this weekend. Excellent. Set it up. Patricia hesitated. There's something you should know, Mr. Bennett. Your son-in-law has been active. Active how? He's been talking to the neighbors. Telling them you're suffering from dementia. That the sale isn't legitimate. One of them called me to ask if they should be concerned. I let out a slow breath. Trenton. Still fighting a war he'd already lost. What did you tell them? That you're my client? That the sale is properly authorized, and that I'd be happy to provide documentation to anyone who requests it. But Mr. Bennett, if he shows up during the showing, I'll handle it, I said. Book me a flight to Denver. I want to be there when the Garcias see the house. 2 days later, I landed at Denver International Airport. The Rocky Mountains stood against the horizon, unchanged, indifferent to the small dramas of human lives. I rented a car and drove to Littleton, pulling up to my old house, just as Patricia arrived with the buyers. The Garcias were in their 40s, Eduardo and Maria, both engineers, relocating from Texas. They had 2 teenage daughters who wandered through the backyard, pointing at the mountain views. Good people, I thought. The kind who would take care of the place. Mr. Bennett, Eduardo said, shaking my hand firmly. Your realtor mentioned you flew in just for this meeting. I wanted to meet you personally. This house has been in my family for over 30 years. It matters to me who lives here next." Maria smiled warmly. "That's very thoughtful. We've been looking for months. This is the first place that felt like home." I gave them the tour myself, showed them the kitchen where I'd made breakfast for Vanessa every morning before school, the backyard where she'd learned to ride a bike, the master bedroom that used to be mine before my guests decided they needed it more. The Garcias loved everything. We were discussing the closing timeline in the living room when the front door burst open. Trenton stormed in like a man on fire. His face was flushed, his tie loosened, sweat beading on his forehead. Vanessa trailed behind him, looking like she wanted to disappear. "This sale is not happening," Trenton announced, jabbing a finger at the Garcias. "This man," he pointed at me, "is not mentally competent to sell this property. We're contesting the sale in court." Eduardo and Maria exchanged alarmed glances. Patricia stepped forward. "Sir, you need to leave. This is a private showing." "Private? This is my home. I've lived here for 8 years. "You've lived here rent-free," I said calmly. "In a house you don't own. On the generosity of a man you publicly humiliated at dinner." Trenton's face went purple. "You stole my retirement fund." "I withdrew my own money from a joint account I established with my own funds. Every penny documented, every transaction legal." I turned to the Garcias, who were watching this spectacle with wide eyes. "I apologize for the interruption. My son-in-law is having difficulty accepting that actions have consequences." "Consequences?" Trenton stepped toward me. "I'll show you consequences, old man." "Trenton!" Vanessa grabbed his arm. "Stop, please. Get off me." He shook her away. "This isn't over, Howard. I'll tie this sale up in court for years. By the time I'm done, you'll what?" I kept my voice level, almost pleasant. "File a lawsuit you can't afford. Claim ownership of a house that's never had your name on the deed. Please, Trenton, tell me more about your legal strategy." His mouth opened, closed. For once, the great Trenton Bennett had nothing to say. Patricia had already called building security. 2 uniformed guards appeared in the doorway. "Sir," one of them said firmly, "you need to leave the premises." "This is my—" "It's not your property, sir. Please come with us or we'll have to involve the police." Trenton looked around the room, at the guards, at the Garcias, at Patricia, at me. His empire of borrowed prestige crumbling in real time. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The guards escorted him out. Vanessa lingered in the doorway, her eyes red. "Dad," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I didn't know he was going to—" "I know." I walked over to her, reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you. $50,000. Use it to start fresh. With or without him." She stared at the check like it might bite her. "I can't." "You can. It's yours. No strings attached." I paused. "But Vanessa? This is the last time. Whatever happens next, you build on your own." She took the envelope with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face as she walked out the door without another word. The Garcias bought the house for $615,000. We closed 3 weeks later. The summer arrived in Naples with a wall of heat and humidity that would have been unbearable anywhere else. But my new condo had air conditioning, a balcony overlooking the Gulf, and, most importantly, no one telling me which room to occupy. I found the place 2 weeks after the house sale closed. A 2-bedroom unit on the 4th floor of a quiet building near the beach. $340,000. I paid cash. The rest of the money, roughly $580,000 after all expenses, went into a conservative investment portfolio. Bonds, dividend stocks, a small allocation to real estate funds. Nothing exciting. Just steady growth in regular income. Enough to live comfortably for whatever years I had left. I spent my days the way I'd always wanted to. Morning coffee on the balcony, watching the fishing boats head out. Long walks on the beach. Afternoons playing chess online against opponents from around the world. Evenings listening to my vinyl collection, which I'd had shipped from Colorado. Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk. The soundtrack of a life finally lived on my own terms. News from Colorado filtered through occasionally. Rachel Cortez, my attorney, sent updates. Trenton's lawsuit went nowhere. His own lawyer advised him to drop it after reviewing the documentation. The police investigation closed without charges. The guardianship petition was dismissed before it even reached a judge. Vanessa and Trenton moved into a rental apartment. 2 bedrooms, $2,100 a month, a significant downgrade from a 4-bedroom house they'd occupied for free. According to Rachel, their neighbors had complained about shouting matches through the walls. I wondered sometimes if Vanessa would use the $50,000 for a down payment like I'd suggested, or if Trenton would convince her to spend it on something else, a vacation, a car, another symbol of status they couldn't afford. That wasn't my problem anymore. One evening in late spring, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was Colorado. "Hello? Grandpa?" A young man's voice, uncertain but familiar. "It's James. My grandson. Vanessa's son. 18 years old now." I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. Trenton had made sure of that. "James." I sat up straighter. "How are you?" "I'm okay. I wanted to call." A pause. "Mom told me what happened. With the money, in the house." "I imagine she did. She said you stole from Dad. But I looked up what a joint account means, and I talked to my economics teacher." Another pause, longer this time. "You didn't steal anything, did you? It was your money all along." I smiled despite myself. The boy had inherited his mother's curiosity, the version from before Trenton. "That's correct, James. I contributed $380,000 to that account 12 years ago. Your father added less than $50,000 over the same period. The withdrawal was entirely legal." "Why didn't you just tell everyone that?" "Would they have listened?" Silence. He was thinking it through. "Probably not," he admitted. "Dad gets pretty loud when he thinks he's right." "Yes, he does." "Grandpa, James's voice cracked slightly. "I'm sorry. For not calling. For not visiting. They made it seem like you were, I don't know, different." "I understand, James. You were caught in the middle. That's not your fault. Can I come visit? This summer, I got into Colorado State, but classes don't start until August. I could fly down for a week or something." I looked out at the Gulf, at the sunset painting the water in shades of gold and rose. For a moment I thought about Vanessa at 7 years old, splashing in that mountain stream, laughing without a care in the world. "The door is always open, James. For those who come with respect." "I'll book a flight tomorrow." We talked for another 20 minutes. About his college plans, his interests, his hopes for the future. He wanted to study business. I told him to take an accounting class. Good accountants never go hungry, and they always read the fine print. After we hung up, I put on a record. Kinda blue. Poured myself a glass of lemonade, sat on the balcony and watched the last light fade from the sky. The next morning I drove to the post office. I had one last piece of business to conclude. The envelope was simple. White, standard size. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A photocopy of the original account agreement from 2013, with one line highlighted in yellow marker. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Below it, I'd written a brief note in my neatest handwriting. "Always read the fine print. Regards, Howard." I addressed the envelope to Trenton Bennett at his new apartment and dropped it in the mailbox. Some lessons need to be delivered in writing. I drove back to my condo, parked in my assigned spot, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway was quiet. The air conditioning hummed softly. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and looked around at the space that belonged entirely to me. No one would tell me to hide when company came. No one would suggest I move to a smaller room. No one would scream at me for ordering a steak. The game was over. I had won, And somewhere in Colorado, Trenton Bennett was opening his mailbox, finding an envelope with my return address, and learning, one final time, that underestimating a quiet man with good paperwork was the most expensive mistake he ever made. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.